Dr. Thikamchand Dakal is currently working as an assistant professor in the Genome and Computational Biology Lab of Department of Biotechnology, Mohanlal Sukhadiya University, Udaipur. Dr. Dakal has more than 12 years of research and teaching experience. Dr. Dakal pursued his PhD studies from University of Modena and Reggio Emilia, Italy, and has postdoctoral experience from University of Montreal, Canada, and University of Bordeaux, France. Dr. Dakal has 40 publications in peer-reviewed journals of international repute. Dr. Dakal has been conferred with the prestigious FIMS Young Scientist Award by FIMS Society of Germany in 2013. Dr. Dakal is on the editorial board of several reputed journals, such as Frontiers in Microbiology, Frontiers in Genetics, etc. Dr. Dakal also holds research chair in BioClus organization currently. He is engaged in elucidation of cellular and molecular mechanisms of diseases such as cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, diabetes, and cardiovascular disorders. Now I call upon Dr. Thikamchand Dakal to take upon the session. Sir, please.
Am I audible to all?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, you're audible.
Okay, fine. And my screen is also visible to all?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, it is.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thanks Professor Rangarao, Professor P.B. Kavi, and the whole organizing team for giving me this opportunity. And I'm also thankful to the two students or the two faculty members there who have really introduced me very well. And so you already took 5 minutes of mine. So now I have only 20 minutes to cover and finish all my talk. So thank you once again. So without wasting time, I would like to start my presentation. And today I would be presenting my work. Basically, it's a bioinformatic analysis of SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, step towards designing COVID-19 therapeutics. Basically, before going into the presentation, I would like to just ask, there were many questions, like when the lockdown started, since that time, I had some questions in my mind that why this coronavirus? This is not a novel virus. This is not a novel virus because from 1960s or maybe from 1930s, we have such kind of viruses and humanity has already affected from these kind of viruses. So it's not a novel virus, but basically when we say it's a novel virus, we say it because this virus is completely different from the previous coronaviruses. We had the MERS, we had the SARS-CoV-1 earlier, but this is completely a different kind of virus, and the reason of this that this virus is very different is that it has a very high transmission rate and it's very highly infective also. It's very infective. So this was the question in my mind, and it, of course, in many of you also have that this question in your mind, that why this coronavirus is highly infective. And second question is that in COVID patients, we often see complex symptoms. Complex symptoms in sense that they had the high fever, as if they are infected with dengue or malaria. They vomit, they have nausea, as if they are infected with salmonella or some food poisoning or something like that. They have a breathing problem. They have like breathing problems as if they are asthmatic or they have some immune disorders. Like so, there are so many complex symptoms that we can see in the COVID patients. But until now, I could not find that why we have this type of complex symptoms in COVID patients, and why the pathophysiology of COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 infection is highly complex. Then the third thing comes like the vaccine. So is a vaccine like it's a is now like a long waiting thing for all of us. We all are waiting for the COVID-19 vaccine. That the vaccine could be of whole organism vaccine. Also, it could be a recombinant vaccine. It could be the mRNA vaccine, which Professor is he just asked a question to Asif right now a few minutes ago. So this is also a question in the mind that what would be the nature of the vaccine and how we would be able uh, to restrict the infection of the COVID-19. So this is also the question. Another question is that what could be the novel therapeutics? Like the when we talk about the vaccines, it's really a very expensive affair. So I do not know, because now so far we do not have a vaccine in hand, so we cannot talk about the cost. But I guess the cost would be like very high, and it would not be like affordable to all. So and the third the another thing is that uh, like um, once I had a talk with Professor Chaitanya from GBRC, and he had something in his mind that we people many in India also, like we are sequencing the virus, and we are getting to know about the that okay, this virus has this kind of mutations, and the virus has mutated so far, it has mutated already 100 times. So how because this is the knowledge about the problem, this is the information about the problem. So but we have to think about the solution of the problem, and the solution of the problem is that we have to understand, we have to know that why some people some peoples are getting they are more prone to this virus, some are less prone to this virus, some are susceptible, some are not susceptible, some are even not getting infected this virus, and some are easily getting infected with this virus. So what is inside this the genome of the human. We have basically to do a comparative genome analysis of the COVID patients, and the patients or the people that have that are that are not getting infected to this infection, even if like they're like in India, we do not have such like a very strict lockdown situation so far. So we are going everywhere, we are touching everywhere. So it means that we are exposed to virus. But what makes us to be resistant to this kind of virus? So we have to do some comparative type of analysis, comparative genome analysis, proteome analysis, or some kind of analysis to find out the reasons that what is inside our genome that is making us prone to coronavirus, and what is inside our genome that is protecting us from the coronavirus. Of course, we have some knowledge, and but we have to think about in this direction. So I will uh, so I will skip some of my slides, because I already have given the introduction. So when we talk about the coronavirus, like it's like a hell coronavirus. Like students, they cannot go outside, we cannot go outside in the streets. It was the situation earlier. People are like marrying people, they cannot marry because now there are so many restrictions also. But of course, some people are taking advantage that they can marry at very low price also. Everything we have to do online. Of course, online things are very good. Earlier also we were doing the things online, but like taking the classes online and doing everything online is little bit difficult task also. And the situation of a class where teacher is taking the class and students, they could be sleeping, and the situation is very drastic. So we just have to stay at home, and we have to just stay protected from this coronavirus. This is the part which I would really like to skip, because I have already and I think we all know that this the family of the coronavirus and the lineage of the coronavirus. And this is the natural history of the coronavirus, that okay, this as I just mentioned, that the coronavirus is not a novel coronavirus, it's not a new coronavirus. Earlier also, since 1930, we are getting infected. Like people, the mankind, we are already they had this kind of virus on earth. So I just skipping this one also. So here just I would like to mention that we had the MERS coronavirus, the SARS coronavirus. Sorry for this this spelling mistake here. There is some typos here. This is SARS-CoV-1 and then SARS-CoV-2. So we know the hosts of these coronavirus, but we do not know the intermediate of this. In case, especially in the case of SARS-CoV-2. So this is the outbreak of the SARS-CoV-2. This is the pandemic situation we have, and this is the situation. Like if we just compare this the SARS infection of the SARS-CoV-2 and the SARS-CoV-1, and we can imagine that the SARS-CoV-2 in 8 months, there were only 26 countries affected from this type of virus, but now we have like more than 250 countries that are already affected by this virus. So I will just skip this part. This is the genome of the SARS coronavirus. We all know about this genome of the SARS coronavirus. I'm coming directly to this the spike protein of the SARS coronavirus. Basically, this is the spike protein of the SARS coronavirus that attaches to the host cells, and it's give entry to the viral genetic material to get inside the host cells. So it's basically the spike protein. So it is the and also the spike protein is the protein that interact with the host cells. So it is the first in if we talk about if we talk about the first interaction of the host cells with the virus, it is because of the spike protein. So that's why many of these studies, the majority of these studies are focused on spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2. So this is how coronavirus multiplies inside the host cells. This is from one of my paper which has been accepted already. This is the multiplication of virus, the same thing. This is basically the immune response to SARS-CoV-2 that it's the normal picture where I like to present. I like to show that how the SARS coronavirus 2 when it would like target our cells, what kind of immune response and how the immune response will be mounted against the SARS-CoV-2. So I would like to start my bioinformatics part. What I did on SARS-CoV-2 is basically that we took the SARS-CoV-2 spike glycoprotein sequence, and we tried to find out the antigenic regions on the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2. So if we would know the antigenic regions in this spike glycoprotein of the SARS-CoV-2, we would be able to know that what is inside that those antigenic regions, and because of that we have the complex symptoms in case of COVID patients, and some other things that we will come across in a few minutes. So basically what I did here is that I took this SARS-CoV-2 protein sequence and tried to find out the antigenic sites on the spike protein, and also tried to see the CTL epitopes against the MHC class 1 and MHC class 2 that are on the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, basically. So these surface exposed antigenic sites here, what you can see here is basically the antigenic sites that would tell us that why we have the complex symptoms in case of SARS-CoV-2, and the CTL epitopes CTL epitopes in SARS-CoV-2 glycoprotein, spike glycoprotein, would tell us that which peptides, or what are the peptides that we can take for the vaccine development, basically. So this is what we found in our study, that we found almost like 9 to 10 antigenic epitope sites on the SARS-CoV-2, and these all antigenic epitope sites were like they were all surface exposed. It means that they were not like residing inside the spike protein. They were on the surface of the spike protein, spike protein, and it means that they can interact with the host cells. And if we consider them as these antigenic one, so maybe these antigenic regions, these antigenic sites would have something, that something I would tell you in a few minutes, that have something that is basically mounting the immune response in the same way that we have basically in case of salmonella infection that we have sometimes in case of malaria or dengue. So basically what I did, when we got this antigenic sites, when we predicted this antigenic site, we used a tool, and we tried to see that if whether any of the microorganisms or any of the parasites, they have this the molecular similarity with this antigenic site that are present on this spike glycoprotein. So to our surprise, we came to know that there are 54, basically there are 54 antigenic determinants, and we found just in this spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2. So there are 54 antigenic determinants that we found, and were related with the 12 pathogenic bacterial species like Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Mycobacterium leprae, anthracis, then Clostridium also. We had the Clostridium tetani also, Helicobacter, Listeria, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, Vibrio, and Yersinia pestis also. Then there was we also found the similarity with two malarial parasites, means the sequence from the two malarial parasites, and influenza virus also. Basically here what I like to say is that this is basically what we found here, that on the top we have the antigenic sites which we predicted in this SARS-CoV-2, and on the x-axis we have the microorganisms, and if the box is colored, it means that that particular antigenic site has the molecular similarity with the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Mycobacterium leprae, like that. So this was the first study. I haven't seen any study until now so far that could basically explain that why we have the complex pathophysiology in case of SARS-CoV-2. It is basically because the antigenic sites that are present on the SARS spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2, they have the sequence, and that sequences basically have the molecular similarity with the proteins that are present in Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Mycobacterium leprae, Bacillus, Borrelia, Clostridium, Helicobacter, Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, Vibrio, and like that. So when a spike protein will have the sequence or the molecular similarity with the pathogenic sequences that are present in pathogens, so it is quite normal that we may have the symptoms similar to those particular diseases also. So that's why this is basically, I feel this paper is under review now, and like it is like already I have sent the revision also, and there was like some very hard questions related with the immunology. I have already covered everything. So this is what basically I feel, that is the antigenic sites that are present in the spike proteins, they have the molecular similarity with the proteins that are present in Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and there are other pathogenic organisms. So I'm just talking about the one spike protein for now. So if I talk about the M protein and if I talk about the E protein, the story would be completely different. I mean to say that I tried with some other proteins also, and I found these molecular similarities is there also. So basically this is the same thing, that the antigens from Mycobacterium that showed similarity were mainly involved in modulating host immune response and ensuring persistence and the survival of the pathogen in the host cells. There were like the antigenic sequences that were present in the pathogens were basically related with the toxins that basically they secrete or they release when they enter inside the human cells. So so it means that the SARS-CoV-2, the sequence of the SARS-CoV-2 has the sequences or the motifs that basically that have the molecular similarity with the another pathogens, and motifs or these peptides, they basically are mounting the immune response in the same ways as those pathogens do in our body. So this is one my study, and that I also did some study towards designing a therapy for COVID-19 patients, and this work is already published now in Immunobiology. It's a very good journal of the Elsevier. This therapy is basically pulmonary EDTA chelation therapy. So uh, I would just like to skip this part. We all know that this all the vaccines, all the neutralizing antibodies, and all the therapies that were designed previously for the treatment of the SARS-CoV-1 were found ineffective for the SARS-CoV-2, and there are so many reasons for that also, but I do not want to go more into the details. And that was basically where we felt the need of developing new therapies for the SARS-CoV-2. So until now, we do not have any drug, vaccine, or any medicine for the treatment of SARS-CoV-2. So if we talk about the like drug discovery or drug repurposing, like, you know, we need years, and years to develop a medicine for the SARS-CoV-2. Okay, I'm just like to skip this part and coming to my analysis part. So this is basically the mechanism of virus entry into the host cells, that you know, the spike protein, the virus, it attaches to the host cell membrane via spike proteins, and then the virus gets its entry. It's not the virus basically, but it's the genetic material of the virus. It gets its entry into the host cells. So what I did in this one is that I took the protein sequence of the spike protein from the SARS coronavirus and the protein sequence of the spike protein from the SARS-CoV-1 one, and I tried to see why there are differences, and what are the differences that are making the SARS-CoV-2 highly infective. So what I found here is that this SARS coronavirus 2 has a very important functional motif that is called as basically the RGD motif. I already had discussed about this RGD motif in many of my talks earlier, and this RGD motif is really a very function. It's a tripeptide motif, but it's a very important, very potent. It's a very strong motif, and if any protein will have this motif, that protein would have a very high ability to bind to the host cells. This is basically what I found. So if the SARS coronavirus, the spike protein of the SARS coronavirus 2 has this motif, so this motif will make this SARS coronavirus 2 to bind to the host cells very effectively and very tightly. This is basically the biology. So what is the importance of this RGD motif? This RGD motif was originally found in fibronectin. It's basically an extracellular matrix proteins having role in cell attachment and cell adhesion. So basically, this motif is present in fibronectin. This is also present in vitronectin and laminin. And all our tissue culture flask and petri dishes, they have coating of these extracellular matrix proteins, and our cells, our human cells, they attach to the bottom of the plates just because of this RGD motif. So here it is all about the basic science. There is no like a very big science. There is no like a big there is no like something like I used a very big instrument and I did a huge analysis. But it's really very important to note here is that this RGD motif is present only in the SARS-CoV-2. It's not present in SARS coronavirus 1 or any other previous SARS coronavirus. And because of this RGD motif, this virus can have like a very high potential to bind to the host cells. You know, if we are talking about the lungs, it is able to bind to the lung cells very tightly or very effectively just because of this RGD motif. And this I can say this now because this paper is already accepted now. So it is also important to know that what are the proteins? This spike protein is not going. The virus is not going directly and binding to the lung epithelial cells. Basically, it is binding to the lung epithelial cells through some receptor proteins. So, what are the receptor proteins that are basically present in the lung cells, that are basically expressed in the lung cells? So what I did, I tried to see the gene expression data of the lung cells, and I found that this RGD motif can bind to the integrins in the lung cells, and integrins, they have good expression in the lung cells. And the RGD motifs, basically they have a high affinity for the integrins, and when integrins, they have high expression in the lung cells, so it makes some story that yes, of course, this could be the integrins. With the help of these integrins, this virus spike proteins is able to tightly bound to the lung cells, and it's like, it is able to become highly infective as compared to other SARS coronavirus earlier SARS coronaviruses. So earlier SARS coronavirus, when they did not have this RGD motif, they were not able to bind to the lung cells very effectively, and for this reason the infections were very less. The infectivity was very less. So these are some of the integrins like alpha V beta 6 and then alpha 5 beta 1, and there were some other integrins also, alpha 8 beta 1 and ICAM 1. So these were the integrins that have a strong affinity for the RGD motif, and this RGD motif is present in the SARS-CoV-2, the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2, and the integrins, they have a high expression in the lung cells. So it makes some sense that yes, this could be the integrins, because until now, so far, we are just talking about the ACE2 receptors. But tell me, why the ACE2? Why should we believe on the ACE2 receptors? Because the SARS coronavirus 1 was for the SARS coronavirus 1 also, the receptor was the ACE1. My infection was less. For the SARS-CoV-2, the receptor is ACE, but why the infection is very high? It means that, of course, ACE2 receptors could be the receptors, but yes, for me, and now I can say with high confidence that there is an alternate receptor also for the SARS-CoV-2, and the integrins could be one of the very important receptors for the SARS-CoV-2. This is basically it is based on the RGD motif that is basically present in the spike protein of the SARS coronavirus 2. So basically, after that, I did some molecular docking experiment also, and what I did, I took the integrins and I took the RBD domain of the spike protein, and I tried to dock the spike protein onto the surface of the integrins. And what I found there is that the spike proteins is able to interact with the integrins. And there was something interesting here that the RGD motif that I found is basically interacting with the integrins. And where this RGD is interacting with the integrins, on that particular site on the integrins, around that site around the docking site on the integrins, there were the sites for calcium binding also. And this is also a well-known fact that the RGD motif that is present in extracellular matrix protein also, they utilize these calcium and magnesium ions to make their strong bonding even more stronger. So when we use when we use PBS buffer without calcium and magnesium and with EDTA, we can disrupt this binding of the extracellular matrix protein with the host cells. So same thing is happening here also. So we have the spike protein with the RGD motif. With this RGD motif, it is binding to the integrins. On the integrins, at that particular docking site around around that docking site, we have the calcium binding sites present here. So it is making sense that this RGD motif is taking use of the calcium ions for making its it's making its bonding with the integrins even more stronger, and this could be the reason for the high infectivity of this SARS-CoV-2. So of course we have to do so many of the molecular experiments also to validate these kind of study. But of course with the things that are already known about the RGD, and that the things that are already known about the integrins, this hypothesis, my hypothesis was making sense to the editor and to the reviewer, and they accepted my paper also. So that is the same thing where I showed on the right side of your screen. You can see that I have made a a red circle. So this is basically the red circle where this RGD motif is binding to the integrins. And this red circle is basically the calcium binding sites present on the integrins that have the role in facilitating this virus attachment with the host cells integrins. So now when it comes about the therapy, so my hypothesis was that if we can remove these calcium ions from the lung cells, we can manage the situation of coronavirus to some extent. So this was my hypothesis. So so as we do in our laboratory also, that we use EDTA that chelates these bivalent ions, and in a cell culture lab also, this type of techniques is already in in use for so many years, that when we use EDTA, it disrupts the attachment that the cells they have with the bottom of the plates, that the cells they have the attachment with the extracellular matrix protein. So the same thing I try to do here, that if we will use the EDTA, this EDTA will create this calcium ion from the lung cells, and this in the when these calcium and magnesium ions would not be available to the SARS-CoV-2, its chances of like attaching to the host cells through RGD or integrin binding would be very
Question, sir.
So yes.
I'd like to remind you the time. Due to time
No
constraints, we would like to ask you to stick to the given time.
Oh, sure. So I'm just finishing in 5 minutes because I'm almost at the end of my presentation now. So what I thought that, okay, this we can have a therapy with EDTA. So this was the therapy that I proposed, that the EDTA chelation therapy. We can use this therapy for the treatment of COVID-19 patients. And this treatment of this using this EDTA chelation therapy is already a FDA approved therapy. So we do not have to we do not have to get into so many of documentation work to get a therapy approved for the to be used on the COVID patients. So we can directly use this therapy on the COVID patients. So this was basically the nebulizer and inhaler based EDTA chelation therapy for the treatment of COVID-19 patients. So here what we will be doing is that we can have this EDTA. We can inhale this EDTA, and this inhaled sodium EDTA, it would go inside the lungs, and where it will chelate these calcium ions present there, and this calcium ion that is important for the virus and host cells attachment. So in that case, when there will be no calcium ions or the magnesium ions, so the infection, or the first, the attachment would be affected, and second, the infection would be very less. So this was basically the therapy. So this therapy, I propose this therapy, and this is in Hindi language basically. So there are some additional benefits of this therapy also, because now that we have the time constraint, so I do not want to go more into these details now. So yeah, I just like to skip everything. I had made the presentation like a very big presentation. So this was already in the news also, and I got I got some award from the MHRD also for this therapy. So now this paper is also out. So finally, I would like to acknowledge Mohanlal Sukhade University for providing me the infrastructure. And of course, I didn't put the photographs of my students. So I know they are watching me. So I would like to thank all my students also. They are like very helping me, helping to me. Whenever I need their help, they are always ready. And I'm thankful to Professor Pankaj Goel, Dr. Abhishek, Dr. Prashant. They are like, my very, very good friends. And they are very, very good bioinformaticians also. So I'm like, I always learn from these people. So thank you very much. Thanks to all.
Thank you very much, sir. And we are really honored to have you, have your presence amongst us.